4, 3, 2, rewind.
Rise of the Fallen, MMO Quest, Pantheon. Once again, time to pledge. Very excited. We're here to talk. Let's get this party to
share your thoughts.
Co-host Derek.
Weekly Adventures, co-host Desrin. We're almost professional.
Full disclosure.
Dangerous combination. Creating content and optimizations. We've got a lore video coming. Cannot wait, which is all about drone fast and some sort of cake. Mail on a Sunday.
News and notes.
Schedule for this week.
Hot cocoa. All these people.
Supports the show. Adventuring party.
You ready? Let's go.
Let me take a deep breath. Good day, everyone, and welcome to episode 138 of The Rewind. This podcast covers the week that was in Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen's ongoing development, as well as what's up in the community anticipating this MMORPG. This week, we've got some unexpected lore drops to recap. We've got a major Pantheon Plus announcement to get hyped about, and, as always, a bevy of community content to share. It's exciting times around here, but the best joy is that which is shared with others. So join me, Theric, and my euphoric co-host, Desrin, for this week's Rewind. Wow, Desrin, what a week, man. So many good things going on this week. What a crazy week. I'm almost sad to see it come to an end. I like Fridays, but this week's been so great.
In the Pantheon realm, I feel like it's been a pretty good week. Yeah,
hell yeah,
for sure.
It's been a great week. Yeah, there's so much fun. I mean, but this is the part where we talk about other stuff other than Pantheon. We'll get to that.
Yeah, just stuff, as people start trickling in, gotta ease up.
You gotta share a little few things that are going on. I've been watching The Last of Us. Like my wife and I are 100% in on that. You haven't watched it?
No, I don't have HBO, but I mean, I'm definitely interested, and I've heard it's so far doing a really good job.
Really, really good. It's become our Sunday night ritual. Although it was on they released it 2 days earlier last week, I think. So it's become our Sunday night ritual. And I severely missed that once House of the Dragon ended. And
yeah.
So love it.
You gotta have
so
something.
Much, even the intro. Yeah, you gotta have something, right? And then something like your perfect wind down for the end of the weekend, right? So I just think it's one of the best shows out there right now. So other than that, how are you doing? You doing okay?
Yep, everything's crazy and my head is barely screwed on, but we're here. I don't have to hold my microphone this week. I retrieved my microphone boom, so I have a free hand. I still have to get around our document and everything, but
yeah. So you can talk with your hands on an audio-only podcast just because you need to, right?
I could, and I will, because that's what I do.
That's what you do. Hey, you know what else our adventuring party does? That was a bad transition. Man, usually those transitions are so good. This was a bad one.
It's okay. It happens every once in a while.
Yeah, they can't all be zingers, right? So our adventuring party this week, of course, is Ziplocs on the Darkmar Rogue, Sparrow on the Elf Ranger, Bounty Coat on the Human Wizard, Screech on the Scar Bard, Wiki Woo on the Human Enchanter, Shuriken on the Dwarf Cleric, Orsosaurus on the Human Warrior, Churro Dude on the Halfling Dire Lord, Fury Wrath on the Archai Summoner, Pavejo on the Gnome Wizard, Sarah Avienda on the Elf Ranger, Galarain Moonsong also on the Elf Ranger, and Annoying Llama on the Human Monk. So those folks all are part of our Patreon. And if you want to get involved in that and you want to have your name and Pantheon future race and class shouted out on the show like that, head over to the Patreon. It's linked in the description and you can check out the options there. You also can leave a super thanks or a super chat if you want to do it more casually and just want to show us whatever amount of appreciation via that. But of course, the main appreciation is just being here, hanging out with us, sharing a good time, sharing the joy like I talked about in the intro. And those that do will get their names on that scrolling banner going across the bottom of the screen during the show, as a fun way to sort of acknowledge that support. So yeah, we got a lot to talk about, Desrin. Let's get the show on the road.
Let's hit the road.
This week in Visionary Realms News and Notes. All right, so we are going to be covering the VIP Bring Out Your Devs roundtable. I still call it roundtable because it's still stuck in my mind. But
I still can't get over it either. The only reason I can remember it at all is the initials or like the acronym or whatever is BOYD, and I think like Billy Boyd.
Yeah, it doesn't really. Yeah, the acronym still gets me too, but it is a good title. So, and they've got the little intro with "Bring Out Your Devs." But anyway, they released this to the public, and I was really happy they did because this is one of my favorite VR devs, and that is J.N. Gerhardt, their lead writer, lore master himself. And they did it sort of in the spirit of Valentine's Day. They had a nice little screenshot that came along with it of a nice couple looking off into the sunset there. So happy Valentine's Day, everyone out there, from us and from VR. But let's cover this. Developer interview because it was a really good one, man.
It was really good, and it always cracks me up whenever we hear JN like in voice, how similar his like mannerisms are to Joppa. Like you can tell they spend time together. It's just really fun.
Yeah, they do that thing where they talk very purposely. There isn't a lot of I'm trying to sort of mimic it right now, but it's very thoughtful the way that their speech patterns are, and I agree with you.
Yeah,
you can tell that they're friends.
And I really resonate with the humor style too. I don't know why that kind of. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's the kind of humor that they have. It's great, and it reminds me of a lot of friendships that I have. So, yeah.
That's very familiar, right?
Yeah, and I should probably apologize ahead of time to the people that had to listen to this live. Again, this isn't like a normal thing that they release live. And so during the recording, we tend to have like a little bit of fun in the chat. And I was just in a really goofy mood last Thursday, and I was like, just full on like disruption and heckling mode as they're recording this thing, thinking it's going to be private. But I will say, like, Savania's a bad influence. Like, you guys gotta know.
Yeah.
She is really a bit of like, she's an instigator too. So like, that's my excuse. But
a provocateur, if you will.
Yes.
An instigator is a good way of it. Yes. She's very good at provoking you to cause trouble in the chat, and you heard it throughout the recording a few times where
that's
he's like, not looking at chat, but I see a question, and yes, Desrin, like you got called out a couple times for being a goofball.
Yeah, it happens,
which was hilarious.
Sorry that's public now. It's a little less smooth than it probably could have been if I just was a little calmer. But
no, it's fun, man. It keeps it real, and just it makes it very very wholesome. So I enjoyed hearing your nonsense in the background. But so we got a lot of good stuff out of this, and it started with a little bit of information about JN's background, how he came onto the team. I thought it was pretty neat to hear the how he sort of brought the lore writing in his background as a screenwriter, novelist, coming into this job, and nothing in terms of the previous characters or worlds that he's written sort of made it through. But one interesting story he talked about was when he was telling Joppa about one of the characters from his novels, and Joppa liked the idea so much that's what got him on board with VR as part of the lore team. So it's like people find it, they're calling through strange avenues sometimes. And I think this is just a really cool story about, that happening. He would go on to express how grateful he is that this is his first gig in game development, in the gaming industry at all. So really neat. And sort of attached to that was a cool story about, sending some of the excerpts from his work to Brad and hearing how Brad was really into his ideas, but also wanting to keep some of the own, like the War Wizards, some of the original stuff, the legacy lore, if you will. And I thought that was pretty cool. So I really like that.
Yeah, it was pretty funny how, I guess, when he was brought on shortly after, I can't remember the words he used, but he basically was like, I wanted to axe everything.
Yeah, I wanted to burn it to the ground or something like that. Yeah,
but obviously they kept a lot of the kind of pillars of the game, the background and everything, and adapted other things to make more sense, which is a really interesting process. And I feel like the whole general gist of the trajectory of Pantheon is so akin to the early days of games being developed. This, I don't want this to come out negative at all, but it's just a group of people that have something they want to do, that they're not necessarily bound to how it's been done for the last 20 years,
Right.
And I really appreciate that. And I also really loved how, as he's talking about like his inspirations and stuff, he really emphasized like real world history as something that he kind of draws from. And not like just to like copy, or be like, oh, this is World War II, but a fantasy version kind of a thing. Like, we've seen a lot of, but more just kind of like a feel of like how history's written down. Like,
right.
Like
right.
personal accounts. I don't know, the whole like, how you would read like a personal account, like a letter versus, what's in a history book. And I feel like we get a really great combo of like both of that. And I think that's one reason that the Pantheon lore feels so authentic and like relatable, is just that weird style of like how believable that is,
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. He's really into the history, like world history. And one of the things that he talked about in that vein was the power, like the sort of the unseen power that some of the ancient civilizations had, right? These amazing empires of old, of ancient Earth, and even not even that so ancient, but like they had this massive amount of power, but it was often that you didn't see it. You just, they sort of lived in this space in your head that was so monumental that that's where it got its power from. And I love that it's based in, there's a lot of base in real history, and some of the best fiction, there's a lot of the fiction I've read has its roots in real world history. And I think that's some of the best stuff because it just grounds it and makes it, like you say, authentic. I don't know if you've read much of like the Kickstarter era lore, but like it's pretty funny how much things have changed.
Yes.
Because there was a lot of stuff that was different back before JN came on, and he talked about that a little bit. Did you know that some of the original lore, there was a djinn race, like a genie race, right?
Yeah.
There was trolls.
I did not remember any of this. So
I knew it from the Kickstarter stuff, and I remember reading it at the time, but I was still learning it. And then when it all changed, or not all changed, but when he came on and started to it took more shape as to what we know it as today. It's fallen away from my memories, but some of the stuff he said I didn't remember. So, and the Revenant was once a playable race, which is crazy because they're still so prominent in the lore as this sort of the antagonist of the world, if you will. So really interesting. And JN said something that I knew you would pick up on. He created the Archai. One of the first races he created was asked to create an elemental based race, and the Archai are the result of that. So really, really interesting.
Yeah. Right? I mean, honestly, hearing that was kind of like the first race that he made for the project was, it makes me even kind of more proud that my main is going to be an Archai, like, it's the OG. It's the original JN, the original Gerhardt creation.
Well, and so whenever somebody asks JN what his favorite race is, he always defers. He says, "I can't choose my favorite kid. Like they're all my children." But hard to argue with the Archai being your firstborn, right? Nah. So don't let my younger son hear that, but maybe that's how it goes. He talked about the dragons a little bit, which was pretty cool. It said, the in terms of the naming conventions, and then compared that to the humans, which, and how you name your lore creatures, how you name the inhabitants of your world has a real impact on the world you're building. So these differences, right?
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
I mean, obviously this is something that you have to keep in mind, but one thing I think that we really like about fantasy worlds is when, different parts of the world or different races or whatever, like have really distinct stylings. And one of the stylings is like, naming conventions. And he made note that like the dragons have like very specific rules. And then the humans have, a lot more flexible like rules for naming, and they could go by nicknames and stuff that you wouldn't typically get for the dragons.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those dragon naming rules are kind of interesting. And I've talked about this before, but like, if you look at the names in the lore, it's like Rock Nilfamos. And then, they all have like a 3-letter preposition almost followed by an apostrophe. Yeah. And that preposition denotes where they are on the hierarchy, the dragon hierarchy. So then there's quite a few of them, and it's really interesting. So like Tel Narcissus, the snow dragon, Rocnilthamos,
Yeah.
Rhaikaphiros, all these different ones is super cool. And he made a joke about, I guess the apostrophe fetish, if you will.
Dude, he mentioned Fires of Heaven forums, and that just cracks me up that he even went there.
Who knew he was cruising over on the Fire of Heavens forums, which are not Pantheon friendly most of the time. So it's funny though. I mean, I guess that was from the old days, maybe when that was a thing. But again, framed in the context of, all feedback's good feedback. And if we were going crazy with the apostrophes, tell us about it, let us hear it.
Yeah.
There was a phrase he used that I absolutely loved and I keyed in on because it's on this topic. He said, even Tolkien had his Minas Tirith, but he also had his Mount Doom. And I just think that elegantly says so much about the importance of keeping your names, your nomenclature grounded in the world, right? So people don't get too out there with their bespoke loreisms, if you will.
Well, yeah, and that one stood out to me too. It's just a good little nugget. And one kind of interesting thing that he didn't say, which ties into that, is Mount Doom does have like a name, like a local name, right. I wish I could remember it right now, but
I don't know what it is.
Like a lot of things in Lord of the Rings have multiple names depending on the culture that's naming it at the time. And what does Terminus? Terminus has like 3-4 names that we know of.
Yes,
something like.
That's a great example. Very good example.
Like you said, it grounds the world because that's exactly how people are in real life. How things are named in real life.
Yeah, exactly. So really nice context there. So he went on to talk quite a bit about Wild's End, and that's the area we've seen a bit of in recent streams. So going on about some of the points of interest there. One of the really cool things was the giant ruins, how that sort of came to be because apparently Wild's End was not populated very much with enough points of interest. So the gate has been there forever. The gate was part of the original design. And if you go back to the original website, if you go into the Wayback Machine and look at the original website, the lore for the gate is there. But they wanted to build out from that, I guess. And so that's where these giant ruins that we've been seeing lately came from. So you see these, and he dropped a name. He actually gave us a name of, I guess, a leader of the giants. It was Amicus. I think is the way he said it. Amicus.
I don't know. It makes me think of like an abacus, the math
like
machine.
An adding machine.
but it's an amical abacus. Sorry, I'm sorry. Abacus. I'm sorry. If JN listens to this, I'm sorry. I don't want to make fun of your naming.
Maybe, I don't know. He doesn't sound very amicable to me.
If I understood it right, this wasn't a character that is like the original, like architecture creator of the gate, but the group of giants that came after, right? Am I tracking?
Okay. What I heard was that he was a leader. He was extremely large, and he had an influence on the architecture that we see there now. So like it was different before, and then he came along. Apparently he had some sort of aims, like other aims.
Yeah.
One of the questions later on in the dev stream that was asked, it was my question. He didn't answer it because he's smart enough not to answer my question sometimes.
That was so great.
Yeah, it was just no. And there was a question, there's a quote in the giant lore that talks about like, they made a deal with the halflings. Something about, I'm trying to remember what the quote is now, but, deny the Galdassi heir, something about the throne. Anyway, there's a line there, and I think I might speculate that this might had something to do with what his aims were, because maybe there was something to do with that deal with the halflings. Anyway, obviously very mysterious and very nebulous. We don't know, but lots of stuff to sort of chew on there once we get in and we can start exploring this stuff.
But also just the general gist of that this was here before and then changed. And then in present, I think he even said that this group of giants isn't there now either. And so we get to have this like this world history of even these points of interest, which I think is just it's cool. It's a lot deeper than you'd expect, to have basically two civilizations come through before.
Yeah, he said that's what gives worlds textures. They have a past and they have a present and a future, right? And a lot of, I mean, not to, go off on a tangent here, but a lot of games these days, MMOs, it's hard to really understand what has come before. Sometimes you're just sort of like, you're given this world and it's like the future lies before you. And it's like, well, I want to know what happened before and what happened in the past.
Yeah.
So that I can make sense of this world.
It's all built at the time when the game starts is how it feels. That's like the only way I can describe it. It just feels like it all happened right before they launched the servers,
Yeah, right. It's like it just blinked into existence and here we are. So yeah, very, very cool stuff. And he sort of went on about the process of creating all, building out Wild's End, building out the points of interest there and how they work, JN and Jared and the other devs on the team. It was a neat back and forth process that it sounds like. So
yeah,
love to hear.
Well, like you mentioned earlier, they kind of came to the conclusion that Wild's End was didn't have enough points of interest, right? And that gets passed to the team, whether it's Jared or Chris or however. But what I love about this is they basically determined like, okay, we need more things, and they added a few more, which we'll talk about in a second. But even just the giant ruins, I love that they passed this to Tim Schuler, environment artist, and Tim basically just built this place out. Swing back over to Jared and JN to be like, wow, this is amazing. Mm-hmm. And what I especially love about this specific thing, talking about all the giant ruins, is and I don't think this was planned, but we literally get to see exactly what he's talking about here. Like we just saw it. And I just think that's really cool. Because it just lined up super perfectly. We just saw that footage from last dev stream about like where we got to look at these ruins and be like, whoa, that's way more than we were expecting. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's just the natural evolution of that kind of point of interest. And
it's a nice companion piece. I said it last time on the last episode. It's a nice companion piece to go along with this. So I'm really into that. They talked about the Daedrum Ascent as a more recent addition. Got a little information about the Daedrum themselves because, when they showed that last year, they talked about it a little bit. There was a lore piece to go along with it. And we knew that it was like a sort of a dragon. The idea we had was that it was like dragon worshippers or maybe something along those
some
lines.
kind of dragon cult.
Yeah, dragon cult of some sort. But what they said on this was that it's a global faction and there's many individual groups of Daedrum on Terminus. Now, the one in Wild's End has been there a long time. They actually had an encounter with the Revenant and they're still there, which was sort of like...
Like,
what does that mean?
JN leaned into that too, because he's like, make of that what you will. And then, moves on like, that is such a tease. Like, does that mean that they're working with the Revenant? Or
that they're so strong that they withstood the Revenant, and the Revenant were like, yeah, we don't want any part of this. Like, we're moving on.
Yeah, maybe this is one of the only places in Terminus where they didn't hide out in a sanctum, and I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many questions, and I love that it's left to the mystery. And I mean, when they do these things with Jan and I send in questions, I know like. I'm like, I got to ask one that I know he'll answer, and then I got to press my luck on a couple others, right? But it's
you got
like
2 out of 3.
I did. Yes. So that's not too bad. There was a point in here where they talked about the Daedrums. They have a relationship with the dragons. Like we said, it's a dragon cult. And then he responded to you being mischievous in the chat.
Yeah.
Saying, no pressure. Thanks, Desmond.
But, the whole relationship with dragons is kind of a continual like tease about the Daedrum. And I think this was when there was a point where someone asked like, what sets the lore in Pantheon apart, and it was like worded in such a specific way. I remember my heckling was, tell us, Jan, why is Pantheon's lore just better than everyone else?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Anyway.
No, exactly. And the appropriate response is thanks, no pressure, right? So, yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, you're not wrong. It's some of the best lore I've ever read. So, now here we go with the part that we got tons of information, and this again was about the deities. So this is the Pantheon. I mean, this is in the name of the game. It's the Pantheon of deities. So we need to know about these things. Specifically, we learned about the gnome Pantheon, and this is something they've never talked about before. Give a couple quotes here that JN mentioned. He said he described them as being similarly disembodied. So like in the same way the gnomes are like they don't have a corporeal existence, they're just energy. Their pantheon is similarly disembodied for what that means. He said the gnomes run the risk of losing themselves internally as much as externally, and basically they're like unsure of how to interact with the world. And if they, it's very much a concept the way he described it here.
Yeah, he was definitely like loose on purpose, but he did say like, while they're unsure of how to interact with the world, he said it's almost like a cultural mandate that they do anyway, because of
because of reasons, and their deities basically reflect this sort of weird, emotional disconnection that they have to be worried about at all times. And I'm paraphrasing here. I don't want to say things that aren't true, but we do have to speculate a little bit. He said they're not like the classic type of deities like the Greek gods or the Roman gods or anything like that. And they have names, but they're also not traditionally named. So like everything about them is unorthodox, much like Pantheon's gnomes in themselves, which lovely, is a great sort of synergy and synchronicity between them. So it's almost like, they have emotions and that's the influence. So I like that as a concept.
Yeah, the little bit I grabbed from this section was that like Jan, and he kind of said this really quick, so I don't know how like concrete this is, but he kind of used the word alignment, or the deities as if they were feelings like sadness or determination.
Right.
And that's just really interesting.
What a cool idea. Like, I mean, I'm sure it's been done. It's in some point in literary fiction history where, deities are emotions, like just personifications of emotion. I don't know.
Well, and
just such a neat,
just with how, tying it into before, what you're talking about with them being kind of disconnected from these things. Maybe, he said their form of worship is a little different as well, but if they're disconnected from these things, if they are like emotions, their form of worship might be like trying to hold on to and practice and remember these feelings, because if they don't, they'll kind of fade away, which I mean, I might start tearing up here.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very human, not, human, but not human at the same time, idea that we are what our emotions are. We are that. If we don't have those, what are we? We're not human anymore. So I like that idea. Yeah, we're getting deep here, man. This is going down a psychological.
I wouldn't say
rabbit hole
this
here.
is completely like this. I feel it was very inferred. Like, I don't think we're too far off, but I want to see how it is represented in game. But I mean, like with all the races, I feel like there's something, specific and unique that like ties you to a story of a race and
100%.
how they are, and these kind of things, man, like even if you're not like a lore person, like I feel like just relating to the race that you play in the game has some meaning and helps you, enjoy the game. And this is a really deep connection that I think is awesome.
Yeah. It's a touchstone that everybody can connect with, so, but hopefully now the next one is not, would be as scary if this is your touchstone.
Yeah.
The Scar deities he talked about, and this is the 9 God and the 9 Hates. And he described it in contrast to the gnomes as being almost an external version of the gnome pantheon. So he said Scar life is basically torment, trying to find peace both internally and externally. And he said Scargle is a terrible, terrible place where everything is awful. And, but again, there's a connection there. There's an emotional touchstone there that somebody can, because again, these are parts of we can relate to this, and everybody has these emotions, and everybody knows this sort of that utter feeling of, being in an awful place and just everything is going wrong and everything's tough, so I think it's so cool. And they dropped I don't know if
this is an actual being. No, this is real.
Yeah, I thought so too. The Scar signature character is a monk. Yeah. And that is very different. That is a very interesting approach to the signature characters and to Scar from what we know of them so far. Cannot wait to hear about that.
Yeah. And, well, as he said, the signature characters are all meant to be like a slight spin on each of the races too, to like help you kind of get a better idea. Kind of like through how they're slightly different. You get the lens with what the race is normally like, right? And I think you see that a lot with Thalen Greyborn, Dothane. Obviously he's the whole thing with him is that he feels like he doesn't measure up, and anyway, this is such an easy podcast episode to get off track.
It so is.
But I mean, I know you probably don't want to hear this, Derek, but I really think the Scar have a lot more going for them than being just kind of one-sided, just evil beast race, right?
Yeah, I'm coming around. I'm coming around to appreciate them for all they are, I think.
Yeah, JN really does seem to be kind of pushing that it's just a lot more complicated than you might think just with the just looking at them, and the Scar life's just difficult, and that we'll see how that ends up manifesting. But I don't know, I'm really eager to hear and hopefully get a story on this signature character.
Yeah. When we when he released the bait, I look back on the podcast shows we did, the episodes we did back when the bait was released. I look back on those episodes really fondly because we had so much fun discussing them. Yeah, and like it felt like this feels like one of those episodes where we're just having our lore dinner, we're just feasting on this stuff because it's so good. And like you say, the story of Arakamel is a good example of something that I really connected with because it was different from an ogre, or from
it showed some of the like troubles of the culture. Not that like the culture is like inherently just super evil or whatever, but it like through the lens of Arakamel, who's also like, I mean, I wouldn't want to run into him in a hallway, but like through that lens, you get to see the race in a different light. And I think that's how we'll see Scar eventually. I mean, I don't think it's going to convince you and Sparrow to like the Scar, but I think my gut feeling is just that, maybe we'll see Scar maybe with more pity than anything. And I think Jan really likes that people are already really interested in them, and I think there's going to be some sympathizing. I think, and
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I don't have to like them, but maybe I respect them.
Yeah, right? you can be like, that's really interesting. I will never play one.
That's exactly right. That's 100% it. Jan said that they do like to hear from the community about how they can get the lore out there better. Made a funny, like and subscribe joke there. It seems like that's going around these days. But something he said that I thought was really cool and sort of relates to our show here is that even though he doesn't read fan fiction with good reason, because he doesn't want to something, the way that ideas come to your head is sometimes it's just you don't want to have an accidental, coincidental idea that happened to come from something you read. But I know Benonai is shaking his head right now in disbelief. He thinks that JN's reading, and making the humans goodies, and promoting them as sort of some conspiracy theory.
On our Discord, didn't he say JN is an Amensol sycophant?
Sycophant, yes. He said he's an Amensol sycophant. So that made me laugh. Absolutely. But something that he did say about the fan fiction is that it's inspiring, right? It's the fact that people feel inspired enough, and that they've created a world that's alive enough to create upon, so
and
to
create
speak. And I
good
agree with
things
that
upon
100%.
too, whether he knows it or not.
Yeah.
But
Yes. So he may not read it, but we do, and we love to share it with you also, and bring that to light. So, one of the discussions that they led into was something about the perception system. And now this isn't exactly lore related; it's more of a game design thing. But I thought it was a good discussion because we've praised their perception system and how it's so
the idea of it,
layered.
at least. Yeah.
The idea, yeah, the flags that your character can acquire, and that determines all these variable outcomes. But he made a good point that, it's like complexity does not always mean something's better. And he used the example of like a switchboard operator with these, hundreds of cables to plug in everywhere.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really good point. He's sort of getting to the root of it being, it has to have some meaning. There has to be something behind it to support it. It can't just be 100 flags that cause things that are just different. There needs to be a real differentiator, meaning in that differentiation, right?
Yeah, and I think that was a really great point. But I also noticed he dropped a little bit about their tool Pulse, which is one of the things they use to kind of create these
nice.
systems.
I didn't catch that. That's really interesting. I didn't catch that.
I'm listening for the tangible gameplay implications. But there are a few things that he kind of rattled off that are options for them. And I don't know if we'll be seeing this like in game anytime soon, because obviously it seems like perception system isn't like the forefront, but they have talked about their tool Pulse, which is, has all this, it's kind of graph nodes and just ways that their design team can put these systems together. And, while his point was that like, we have all of this complexity that we can lean into if we need it, but we're not going to lean into it unless we need to, right? That was the whole point. But nevertheless, it's really nice to know that they already have tools in place that can have all these different like flags and variables. Like he mentioned, your gear, your faction, your race, your class, current events, things that you've done up to that point, people that you've even walked by and just overheard conversations as a flag. What you have equipped, what you have unequipped, so all those being potential factors just for the dialogue options, or other things like quests maybe. But a couple of things he said kind of really stood out to me. So one, that if they used all the tools, they could create a sequence of dialogue just as in depth and variable as a single player RPG, which I think it's one of those things like we can. Obviously, they're not going to do that for every single thing.
Right.
But the other thing being that it kind of sounds like the goal is to set things up so that you could, play as 3 or 4 different characters and get a noticeable difference with your playthrough. I'm sure having a different race and class would dramatically change that, right? But it's nothing really new, but it's just encouraging to hear that's like still the goal, and that that they do have tools. Like they've talked about this in the past. It was just nice to hear kind of an update on, that's it's there. It's just we need the manpower or whatever to kind of start really hooking it up. But
yeah, and I think it was just refreshing reassuring for me to hear JN say like, we're not just doing it because we can. We're doing it if it has meaning and if it has depth that adds to the experience, right? Because you could do this, just for everybody, and it could just be like for the sake of doing it, so we can say we did it, but just purposeful,
Yep.
So yeah, really interesting stuff there. All those flags, and I think we're due for another perception, dev stream at some point to talk about where it's at, because I think this is so intriguing and just something I've loved since day one, and I want to know more about it, and I want to know how it's going to feel in the world.
We all do.
So, yeah, definitely. So yeah, I'm going to, we talked about the signature characters, but like they said, they have a bunch. The Scar Monk is one. So there are definitely more than that.
That was the new reveal, but they definitely made it clear that they have more.
I know he's talked about working on a Darkmer cleric. Was it a paladin? I think it was a Darkmer cleric. that he's got up his sleeve as well, from a past show. We now we got a very important answer to a question.
Oh, yes.
That we needed to know.
Highlight of the show.
So, why are dwarves blue? That is a question that has come up before. So, Jan told us, Causus, the deity, one of the Pantheon deities of the dwarves, does not have blue skin.
Yep.
He embodies their character more than their external. So it's more of an internal than an external image. And that is represented in things like the desire for a family. So when you read the lore about Causus and the dwarves, it's constantly, the refrain is, these are his family. All dwarves are his family. And he sees them as his children, right? And the desire for an immortal soul, right? So Causus wants to be amongst his family. He wants to be there. And I think this was really funny because it started off as kind of a joke question, but it actually gave us some interesting insight into his character.
Well, it's funny. I think I know where this came up first. I think this was originally from Sir Medieval, actually, because he was making his dwarf video, his like dwarf background lore video, because Sir Medieval also really loves dwarves. And he suddenly realized that it never is specifically stated if Causus was also blue. And and so I think he put up like a YouTube poll, or like, all around just like, guys, do you think Causus is blue or not? Like, it says he, created the dwarves like this, but never actually says it. And so we get an answer from Jan, like, no, it's more of an internal thing. Causus himself may look quite different.
So if it's not in his own image, like, how did they become blue, right? So the ice of Ryfel was mentioned on the show, and that's probably the most logical connection.
Yes, he pressed the ice of Ryfel into, was like the stone of the mountain.
Yes, the mountain on Oldasa, which is the planet. And I don't remember the name of the mountain, but it was a combination of those two things that made them look the way they are. I guess that's the assumption we can sort of go from now. But till we get into the game and we have the chance to actually dissect a gnome and find out why, or dissect a dwarf.
I got you.
Find out why
I think a lot of people in our chat probably are ready to dissect a gnome. They're equally curious.
Well, I had gnome on the brain for there, so don't blame
me. There are some other in-game related things that we're very curious on.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm curious on all of it, and then one of them is Lady Winleon. Now, this was my question, and this comes from the Black Rose Keep when they put up those lore bits in a newsletter last year. There was a name dropped, and it was Lady Winleon as a noble from Thronefast. So my question was like, what can you tell us about her? Jan said she comes from a noble family, described her as being sort of caught between two worlds. She's married to Amani Karos, who is the leader of the Black Rose, who you'll know, the history there, and there's a story that goes along with that. But she's also not just, his partner. She's doing her own thing, is what he said. She doesn't agree with all the things that Black Rose has done. She started doing her own thing, which he was vague about. What is that now? There's tension in the House of the Black Rose, which is a wonderful setup.
I love he just threw that line out too. I don't know. I think he just naturally said it that way, and I'm like, that's like a line from that's like an ending chapter line, right?
Yeah, man, it's awesome, man. He just does it naturally. He said that she's capable of doing whatever she wants. She is a current character, absolutely will be in game in the present time when we're in there at launch and whatever. Talked about Amani Karos being one of the most intimidating characters, like very much the antagonist of Thronefast, like just completely against Thronefast. And so it makes you wonder, like, what's she up to? How is she doing her own thing, and what does that mean? So
I love that there's just this little micro story just within Thronefast, like this is human stuff. Like this isn't world events and big stuff. This is like, trouble in Thronefast, and just the fact that there's another layer to it. It's just not just like, oh, Amani Karos like is like exiled or whatever, or, he's against Thronefast, and so now he's got his Black Rose Keep, and they're the bad guys because Thronefast is a starting city. It's a lot more complicated
exactly.
than that. And
Yes.
honestly, Lady Wen Leon sounds like a total badass, and I'm here for
Total
it.
badass.
I'm here for it.
Yes.
And I can't wait to like dig into the story of that. And it with all the complication of narrative here, I like this is just set up for being able to gain faction with Black Rose, right?
Yes. Yes.
It's not just a dungeon, I don't think. We'll see how that plays out. But with all this going into it, I'm excited.
Intrigued to say the least. Absolutely. So yeah, cool stuff. The last point that I'll mention, he talked about, answered a question about epic weapon sort of quest lines and storylines. He mentioned that there's a couple in the game. He didn't name them, but I know one of them is Arakamel's weapon, Moonfell. That's something that's talked about in Arakamel's signature character story. And then Dothane, the last signature character we met, has one. And I didn't remember
I'm
what it was.
so proud of
but I know
myself.
you did. Yeah, you got this.
I
You got
may have
this.
read the bait a few times, and so I was like, it's Hammer, and because
Yes.
it's actually conspicuously the same as Lockenhammer. If you
Yes.
remember the dwarves' backstory and
Triumvirate.
yeah, yep. So
So good on you, man. Good
Thanks,
catch
man.
there, because I didn't remember what it was, but I love that. And that's just, again, that's something that is so intriguing to just players, even if you're not into the lore. Like, what are the big bad weapons? Like what can I quest for? What are my goals?
And
So,
JN even specifically notes that the signature characters are meant to kind of like mirror players in that sense, both with how their story might not line up exactly with like the typical race setup, and with the epic weapons, it's a representation of there's these signature characters like but this is your story. You become like your own signature character in a sense. And I like that little.
I do too. I think that's great. So that was pretty much all the information from this.
No. We've got to do this. So I'd be pretty remiss if we finish this segment and I didn't embarrass you with the huge shout out that JN gave you.
Yes. You proceed to embarrass me if you must.
So I really love this part of the show. Obviously, because he totally sidetracks, like completely, like doesn't even let Ronak finish the question to say just how much he appreciates you. But also, he talks about like how much you meant to him years ago, like way back in the day when you were on Voices of Terminus. And all you did, I guess you just said that you thought that the writing was really good, and that really stuck with him. Like he just came to mind on the show, and I don't know. I think that's just it's really cool, just something to keep in mind. The devs hear what we're saying, and like those words can stick years and years later. So sometimes for good.
I was pretty humbled. I mean, I was pretty humbled and embarrassed for sure, but like in a good way. And I just, he's such a great dude. Like he's just such a great dude, having spoken to him, when we interviewed, and it was so good. And he's just such a nice guy. And somebody told me something one time, and it's a famous quote. It's not like this is unknown, but people don't remember what you say to them. They remember how you make them feel.
Yep.
Right. So it's so true, and I remember people that, say things that stick with me too when it's like it's such a nice thing, and it's just such a human thing, and he's just just a great dude, and I really appreciated those kind words, and I certainly reached out to thank him.
It was super funny because you couldn't be there because you were doing the 201.
I know.
And so
it was
he went
the one
off
time I couldn't be there too.
And I was thinking like, oh man, this is going to be private. Only Theric is going to hear this. And then sure enough, they released it live. I was just enamored that I got to do this on our podcast live, and that people would get to hear Jay and dote on my co-host. But yeah, I think I as Jan said, Theric's got a good sense of things, and you wouldn't say it's good if you didn't actually believe it. And I appreciate that about you, and I hope others in our community get that sense as well. And obviously, JN did. So, Oh yeah. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, okay, thank God, because I'm feeling the cheeks flushing a little bit, but thank you. That's very nice of you to say, and it's just great community and great people that I have around me to spend my time with. So love it. So anyway, let's move on to the next thing, and this is they're doing another one of those Gleam.io pre-alpha access pass giveaways, which is very cool. And cool little screenshot to go with it too. I love how they like release these screenshots as part of these. It actually shows some cool nighttime lighting, which is a topic that comes up once in a while. But anyway, back to the actual subject matter. So they're doing another Gleam.io. If you want to get in on this, there's a link in the we'll put a link in the description of this video. You can also go to their Twitter and find that I think it's pinned on their tweets. It basically just gives you access to this month's pre-alpha session with no need to purchase a pledge, do anything else. It says join hundreds of other adventurers. They're going to reveal the winner on February 22nd. So that's like 3 days before the pre-alpha test starts. So yeah, and there's no like cost to you to enter. It's free to enter for everybody, and you can put multiple entries in as well. So
yeah, just
why
do
not,
it.
Right?
I mean, I'm rooting for Amanda Rohan or RedBeardFlynn, selfishly, but you know, everyone. Last time, a lot of people entered, but don't let that hold you back. You know, you never know.
Yeah. Get in there, man. It's going to be a good time. So that's the VR news for the week. Let's talk about what's going on Pantheon Plus this week. The MMO March Madness is in full swing. So if you don't know what that is, we did a little promo. Go back and check our episode last week, and you'll see what it's all about. But basically, the brackets are being submitted. There's like 18 last time I counted submitted so far. So people are putting their stuff in there to get ready. And then the voting starts on March 1st. So again, this is no cost to enter, just, you know, a little effort on your part to fill out a bracket, and you could win some stuff. We're giving away a hoodie, a Pantheon Plus hoodie. We're giving away, that's first place. Second place prize is a Pantheon Plus After Dark mug. So the After Dark crew. And then third place is a Pantheon Plus After Dark fridge magnet. So it's really cool. And you can check out, there's a link in the description for the merch that we have available as prizes for this, which is awesome. So Draq is all over this. And speaking of Draq, him and his buddies are still going hard on Dark Age of Camelot. Yeah. That's the Pantheon Plus Midnight After Dark crew that I mentioned, Mondays midnight on our Twitch channel, right? We are still going strong on Lord of the Rings Online, having a great time. Tuesday nights, 9 o'clock Eastern on our Twitch channel, 7 o'clock on Thursdays on our YouTube channel with our respective 101 and 201 teams. That's a lot of fun. Our friend Benonai has another fan fiction piece he's translated into audio form going up on his YouTube channel. This is called Shadow of the Fox and the Wolf, or Amensol Shadow, the Fox and the Wolf, I should say. Very great story. It's part 2 of that, so check that out. As you mentioned, Des, our friend RedBeardFlynn going strong with his content. He's reviewing where EverQuest 2 is at in 2023. I love to see that. One of my favorite games, yours as well, I know. So... And that's pretty much all that's going on. Right? There's nothing else.
Nothing huge or massive that.
No, huge, massive announcement. We are streaming in the next Pantheon pre-alpha session. Pantheon Plus has been received permission from Visionary Realms to stream 2 hours of pre-alpha gameplay. And we are doing that on Saturday, February 25th from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern on our Twitch channel. Draq is running the show. We've got Draq, myself, you, Desrin. We've got Stands in the Fire, Sparrow, and Daimlos. I'm not forgetting anybody, right? Is that everybody? I think that's everybody.
Oh no, I wasn't paying attention. I think you got everyone.
Pretty sure that's 6 people. And we are going to have a great time. You do not want to miss this. This is exclusive stuff, and we are going to be doing
We're going to go hard.
Nobody's are going hard. We're going in because we might not, who knows when this opportunity comes along again. We have a game plan. Now, I'm being sort of circumspect with the details, but I will tell you, because I want to leave some stuff to the imagination, that the characters from this test, as they've said, have not been wiped over the last 2 test sessions. So take from that what you will. And we have a game plan. I will note, Desrin is our only healer. So if we die, it's all your fault. No pressure. You're like freaking out this whole week. You're like,
Yeah, behind the scenes, guys,
Funny.
I processed it immediately. I was like, is this? I found out through the announcement that I was the only healer. And
yes.
yeah, it's going to be a little nerve-wracking. But like Derek said, we do have a game plan, and we want to cram as much into these 2 hours as possible, just to get the most value for you guys, really. I mean, out of this.
Yeah.
And
totally.
that kind of leads me to while we have some ideas of what we want to do, we want to hear like what would you guys want us to do. So if you have any suggestions or maybe some questions that, you know, keep it reasonable, but, you know, things that we might be able to respond to during the live stream, if you want to like preload us with that stuff, drop them in the comments on our videos, and or just go to our Discord. There's obviously, you know, Pantheon chat channel on Discord is a great spot, or tag us on Twitter. You know, one way or another, just get a hold of us, and we'll try to, you know, collate a list of things to keep in mind for those 2 hours and see if we can cram stuff in there. And I think it's going to be a really busy and crazy time, but I'm dead set on this being like the most informative pre-alpha stream ever. So
yes, yeah, I know. I'm going to be working on this all week. Like I've got the game plan, and we're going to be talking about it, us, you know, the group of us, and figuring out how we can just not waste a single moment of this, because we really want to hit it hard, like you said, Des. So, I'm so excited. That was such a great thing to announce this weekend. I'm just so excited for this. So definitely look forward to seeing everybody there. So that is it for this week's news and notes.
the Pantheon community is full of cool projects, new people, and things that are just worth sharing. What's this over here? Look at that. So let's see what we can find in this week's Community Spotlight. All right, Community Spotlight time. And again, it feels pretty good to have a, you know, decent chunk of community content flowing again.
Yeah,
no, like I don't want to say it's been, you know, a little anemic, I guess, but I don't know, maybe it took a lot of people a little bit longer to recover from New Year's, right? But
yeah, maybe.
You know who's really in full swing right now? Benonai. You mentioned him on the
Yes.
calendar, but two things from Benonai this week. One was kind of a surprise, a very glad surprise, but the first one you mentioned, you know, The Fox and the Wolf, Part 1. These are amazing. He's doing a fantastic job, like narrating and adding ambience, and yeah, it's a treat. So check that out. There is also Pantheon Rise of the Fallen February 2023 Guide to Wild's End. Now, we had some conversations on our Discord, right? And trying to figure out where these different spots were, because all this, you know, new area that was revealed that we're super stoked on. And Ben and I, as he does super well, digs super deep and kind of corrects us in a lot of ways. Like the gate, it's in the northwest of the zone. So what we were seeing was just kind of like the whole giant ruins, except for like, I think one shot in the video, and he points it out. He points out where the cameras are. Like it's very informative. It's actually not even that long too. So he makes very good use of time. Great video if you want to kind of get some more context on what that last dev stream was.
Yeah, he's got a real future as not only as just an author, because he's an amazing author, but as like just a content creator.
Yeah.
Like this is the kind of stuff that people feed on, right? These short, to the point narrative, like narrative free, just show me the thing. Like just show me the thing. That's all I want, right? So I think this is a great idea. I totally encourage him to continue to do these, because I think this is like that's gold.
Yeah. So yeah, great job, Ben and I. And can't wait to see more. Then next up, Sermon Evil's back, tracking the alpha progress of December and January. And this is so catching up basically on progress from December and January, because he's been doing other content. He's kind of lightened up a little bit as well. So he's getting back on that horse and tackling kind of 2 months of dev tracker stuff all at once. So if you want to get recapped on that, you know,
Yeah. I have to watch this one. I haven't had a chance to check.
It's pretty quick too. Like he covers a lot of ground. 2 months, you know. And then our buddy RedBeardFlynn. He's everywhere. Yeah, he's on 2 podcasts this week. And I know I'm kind of breaking my own rules here a little bit, but it's RedBeardFlynn. We can break some rules for Red. The first podcast, which I mentioned was coming up last week, so I'm going to remind you, was the 1v1 podcast. Now, last one was with Bazgrim, and Bazgrim recommended Red. So they were just like, all right, I guess we get RedBeardFlynn on the show now. I mean, you can't really say no to Baz. So,
no, a Baz recommendation comes very highly in the podcasting world.
Yes, and very deserved. So yeah, RedBeardFlynn, if you enjoyed the 1v1 with Bazgrim, you probably love the one with Red. So, and then also our buddies at Disparate Worlds did another, they call it Walking the Plank. Let's see. So this one was called MMORPG post-launch die-offs. And, you know, again, not really Pantheon, but, we love Disparate Worlds and Red. So, it's another really fun, like interview / talk, with all of them together. So check that out also, in the description. And then, of course, speaking of Bazgrim, he did his watch party for the last dev stream. Now, the last dev stream, as you guys know, if you listened to our last episode, was packed. And who is going to unpack that better than Bazgrim, step by step?
Yeah, nobody.
It's a long one. But yeah, I don't think you could really go beyond. So
no,
check that out. That's on YouTube now. But that is actually going to be it for this week's Community Spotlight.
All right. Well, that is the show. No lore piece this week. I know I was so busy this week and trying to get everything done. I know we don't often miss the lore pieces, but this is one week where we had to. So I promise it'll be back next week, and we will. But we talked about a lot of lore anyway.
I think that kind of makes up for it, right? Like the whole episode was a lore piece. So
basically, yes.
If you haven't stopped watching by now, I mean.
Yeah, if we haven't fed your lore soul by now, you're never going to be satisfied. So. Yeah. Anyway, so again, thank you everyone for being here today. I just want to say as we end the show that, you know, the opportunities like being able to stream pre-alpha we only get those because you support us in the show and what we do, not only here on the Rewind, but all of the Pantheon Plus stuff we do, you know, and we do this out of passion for the project. And, you know, if you go to our YouTube page, you can see our little video on our homepage, like what is our vision? What is our goal? It hasn't changed since day one. You know, it's all about building community to support Pantheon, being a successful MMO, and one that we want, and one that lasts, one that we make our home. You know, that's been the message since day one, and that is what we're trying to do. So and your support is everything. So just being able to do this stuff is super cool, and we do not take it for granted. Oh, yeah. We know that's why I think Desmond had the idea, you know, to ask people what they want, you know, and leave a comment, let us know what you'd like to see in the stream, because we want to represent, we want to, you know, pay that back. Right. So anyway, just a little gratitude. I cannot wait to see you all next Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern, January 25th for the stream. Come out, represent the Rewind crowd strong, you know, get in there and let us know you're there. So we cannot wait to see you there. So with that, I'll say have a great week and see you next weekend.
See you next weekend, everyone.
Woo! Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pantheon Plus Rewind. Pantheon Plus is not affiliated with Visionary Realms. Be sure to check out our Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube channels under the name Pantheon Plus. You can follow Theric at Pantheon Theric on Twitter, and Desrin at DesrinDoes also on Twitter. And you can stay up to date with all things Pantheon at www.pantheon.plus. Until next time, cheers, and thanks for listening.